Hey, soul survivors. I know a lot of us are struggling with some mental illness, or we might have some family members that need some help. So I'm here with GINI HAFFNER, and she has a lot of information for us today. So, GINI, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'd be happy to, and thank you for inviting me. As she said, my name is Jenny Hafner, and I am the president of NAMI Calhoun County, Michigan. And I have been involved in NAMI since 1996 and have never left the fold. What my purpose is with NAMI is to educate, advocate, and to support people who have mental health conditions and their families. Anybody that needs any information on mental health, if it's a clergy, if it's lawyers, if it's whoever, I'm here to help them and guide and direct them in any way I possibly can.
And I'll tell
We
you what, GINI helped me. And she had like great information, a lot of advice, and a lot of resources, like you said, with lawyers or attorneys or clergy. A lot of people, when they get back to God, that helps them too. So, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just so excited about all the extra services. So is it a group session or is it one-on-one? How does it work when somebody reaches out to you, and how can they contact you?
They can contact me by email, GHAFF99432 at AOL.com, or they can text me, call me at 513-407-1957. And I have no hours. I'm available 24/7.
Which is good
And
because I think I called you kind of late. But you were there when I needed you.
well, I was happy to be able to help you. And when we reconnected, I did remember you very well in some of the things that you were dealing with. So I'm glad that I was able to provide some direction, if nothing more than empathy, support, and somebody to vent to. Although I couldn't solve your problems, I certainly could empathize with you and give you some direction as you needed.
And sometimes somebody just needs somebody to talk to. There's a lot of isolation. My channel deals with narcissism, and a lot of people were isolated because of that situation. And then they had some CPTSD going on and nowhere to go. And a lot of people don't quite understand the type of like the trauma bond that happens. So people are just get over it, and they don't quite always understand. So the other thing I wanted to ask you, um, uh, when is it advisable for somebody to seek therapy?
As soon as possible. As soon as they have something that they can't handle on their own, they need somebody to talk to. We at NAMI are available. And of course, there's professionals, mental health professionals out there that can assist them. Some of our signature programs that are very helpful to families as well as people living with mental illness. A main signature program that I was involved in 1996 and still involved in today is Family to Family. It has gone from a 12-week session to an 8-week in-person or Zoom session to help families better understand the diagnosis, um, communication skills, how they can better relate to their loved one by the phrasing they use, not using the you word, by using like it pleases me when I see your room tidy instead of saying you need to get in there and get your room clean. That doesn't work.
And I'll tell you what, I'm a teacher, and we had this one kid who really struggled, got real violent, and we had to use certain specific wording, and it was like a magic trick. It was like,
Absolutely.
whoa. Like wording makes a huge difference. And I
After
like how you said that they need to understand the diagnosis.
Exactly. But getting back to the communication for a moment, I had a participant in my program. I've been teaching this family to family program since 1997, and I've taught over 40 of them. And after the communication skills workshop, she called her son, who she had not been able to relate to. And she called me yet that evening. It was very, very late. And she said, I had the best conversation with my son that I have had since his illness engaged. And that's because of the techniques that she used.
Yeah.
Another example I use is a man and his wife had called me on their way to a neighboring city where their son was suicidal. And the son eventually did die. And at the visitation, the father said to me, because of you, we had our son longer than we would have otherwise.
Oh, and that can make a difference. And now, how would you handle it? Sometimes people are like, I'm so mad at, like, you don't care. I'm just going to go kill myself. Some people do it for attention. How do you know? Do you always take it seriously, or are you enabling them to try to manipulate? Because some people mean it. Some people are serious and some people aren't.
You're absolutely right. And I have belonged to our suicide coalition in Battle Creek since its inception. And I've also been a support facilitator to our suicide loss survivor group. You always take it seriously. You never know if it's a bluff, you never know if it's a bid for attention, but whatever it is, you need to certainly take it seriously and do whatever you can. Question them. Do you have a method you intend to use? You're not going to put that thought in their mind, because if they intend to take their life, they're going to use a method that's foolproof. But you want to know if
Wait,
there's
did
any.
you say you should ask or should not ask?
Ask. Yeah, you are not going to put the idea in their head if they're going to take their life, if they're threatening to, because they've already had the notion. So, do you have a method you intend to use? Is there a certain date that we need to consider that you are thinking about it? But some of the telltale signs that they may be contemplating suicide would be: are they giving some of their possessions away? Are they
Yes.
paying a debt? Are they reuniting with friends they haven't seen for a while? Just a few of the
I'm
many
getting
ways that
chills. Yeah.
could be a that they are thinking about it.
Yeah, because
But
I've had some friends that have taken their own lives, and it's really sad, you
it's
know.
I know, because I have family members who have one to schizophrenia and the other one to bipolar disorder. And people question people that take their lives. Are they selfish? Well, let's look at it this way. The liver is an organ of the body that gets sick. The pancreas is an organ of the body that gets sick. The brain is an organ of the body that gets sick too. And any of those diagnoses can cause a death. And mental illness certainly is a big factor in many people's mental illness that have taken their lives.
Right. Yeah, I see what, like, I can see how they're saying it's selfish, but that person's hurting so bad that it's not for them to get back at you. A lot of times it's just they can't handle it. And what's going on in the brain, it can be overwhelming and control what you are. And also with the schizophrenia, that is very scary because they hear voices and they feel compelled to do it. Also, they just had that kid, I can't remember how old he was, 17 or something, but he jumped off I think it was a dare that some people don't even really think sometimes they uh is it suicide or is it actually a dare that they don't have the self worth to know to say no to somebody. Like, that's a dumb dare, that they just want to fit in so much.
What I tell people is suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And years ago, and I'm going back probably 22 years ago, I was teaching at the State Psychiatric Hospital in Cincinnati, Summit Behavioral Health Care. And there was a father that took the course from me, and very faith-based family, very well-known family. And the voices in the son's head told him on his 18th birthday to take a baseball bat and kill his mother.
uh,
He
and
did.
and he did.
And it's hard to rationalize with an irrational mind. And then you've got the voices in your head commanding you to do something. And sometimes just to shut them up, just to get them out of your head, you act upon it just to escape the reality of the situation. And
I
that's really.
Very sad. I had a neighbor who she had a little girl, so the two girls would play together at my place, and if the TV was on or a radio, you could see her affect change. Do you know why it changed? I know, like, our brain has like electrical impulses. Is it like the waves kind of stimulating somehow?
It's the chemistry in the brain that does it. For years, I worked with Compeer in Warren County, and that's an organization that matched a community volunteer in a supportive friendship with someone with a mental health condition. And every week I would take them over to the Y, and we would walk the track. We would play ping pong. We'd shoot hoops. We'd work out with the lightweight equipment. We would swim. But this one man I was walking with one day, and we were having a very calm, organized conversation. And all of a sudden, the chemistry in his brain ignited. And it wasn't any stressor that ignited it. It was just that the wires got crossed, and he became somebody that was completely different than the person
I'm
I'd been
glad
with.
you brought that up because yeah, sometimes it's like out of the blue, like what is going on? And it can be very peaceful and all of a sudden chaos.
Mhm. And the propensity for a person with that unstable gene, it's not unusual for them to glide through life without any situations. My son, I will use an example. He was an honor student. He was a good athlete, and he served in Desert Storm, Iraq invaded Kuwait on the 3rd of August of 1990, and on the 7th of August, he was attached to a destroyer. And went over to the Persian Gulf and never showed any indication whatsoever that he could not withstand the threats that Saddam Hussein made, that like we have chemical warfare, we're going to annihilate your troops. All the threats that he made that never came true never bothered my son, never ignited that chemical imbalance. But when he came home and he was involved with a relationship, and the night that he died, she said to him, he said to her that he was going to take his life. And she said to him, "Go ahead, see if I care."
Yeah.
She told that. Why did I need to know that she told me that? I'll never be able to figure that one out. But the fact is that, they can be as peaceful and calm as they can possibly be. And something will trigger that imbalance. And the motivation or the stimuli or whatever it is for them to act upon the threats becomes positive.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people start getting angry if they had this breakup that I've seen a lot of anger and they're just telling that and I don't think anybody should hear just go take your life. And because people do act on it. You don't have to be with that person, but don't make it worse. And now I know you deal with mental illness. What about addictions? Do you deal with
Yeah, the crossover is gigantic. It depends on what statistics you believe, but some say 40%, 50%, 75%. It depends on who's doing the outcome study as to what the proportions are. But yeah, it's very high. Oftentimes, people that live with mental health conditions also have an addiction either to drugs or alcohol. Not always, but that does oftentimes happen. But what we do is when we relate to someone who is addicted, we want to find out, do you also have a mental health condition? Or if it's a family member, does your son, daughter, husband, sibling, friend, staff member, do they struggle with mental illness? And that oftentimes is a precursor to one or the other. What came first, the mental illness or the addiction? Does it matter? No, we're going to treat them both.
right? Now, are addictions always related to mental illness, or is it just like the chemicals taken? That's what I thought. Yeah.
No, but years ago, when I first got involved in mental health 40 some years ago, there were two different agencies they had to go to. If they had an addiction and a mental health condition, they would have to go to this agency for the mental health and then another one for the addiction. Now, that since they are so comorbid, the agencies now overlap. They take care of both situations in the same place instead of having to bare their souls to one agency and then go over to somebody else and tell the same story over again.
Yeah,
So
because
that's
otherwise people might drop out, and you do have to
absolutely.
deal with the whole situation. Like if I had a broken arm and a broken leg, do I have to go to two different doctors? And I did want to ask you, does insurance, now you guys are free, right? NAMI is
Yeah.
free, which is
Every
amazing. Um, but does insurance cover therapy?
It depends on what policy they have and what insurance company they're with. Some in the past have done like 10 sessions, 12 sessions. Insurance parity is very important. And now pretty much most states have full coverage on the mental health and or the addictions. Not all, but many do. And that's where the families need to find out, and the person that's suffering with the addiction or the mental health condition need to find out from their insurance company just what the policy will provide. But when they don't, we have support groups. And I want to talk a little bit about that in addition to our signature programs like Family to Family, like I briefly talked about.
Right.
We have support groups. And I started one in 1996. had a little hiatus for a while, but back in 11 started up again, and they were face to face at a hospital in Marshall. And now, since the pandemic, we do them by way of Zoom, and I can have 16 in one group, and then maybe the next one I'll have
Oh,
6 or 8. But we don't have a time limit on it. If we need 2 hours, we'll take 2 hours. If we need 45 minutes, that's what we're going to do, because nobody's going to leave there feeling cheated that they didn't get to tell their story or get the support that they needed.
that is awesome. And is it just you come and like I would share my story, or is it like topic related?
No, it's not topic related at all. No, everybody will tell their story. Some people are not in crisis, but yet I've got people that, since I started the group in 11, that come to every one. And although their loved one may have reclaimed their life and gone on with their lifetime goals, they may be a resource for somebody who's going through a similar situation that they've been through, and they can help them. This worked for me, but it may not work for you, and what may not have worked for you may work for me. So,
And it
you know,
also helps people not feel so alone. Like the
absolutely, you are not alone in this. As long as NAMI is in your life, you never have to be alone again, because we're going to walk beside you and do whatever we can to help you.
Yeah, because you definitely took the time. There's times you couldn't get back right away, but you communicated fantastic. Like, I have to do this, but I will get back with you. And you kept that commitment. So I really appreciate everything. Um, so what are some reasons that people don't seek help? And
Stigma,
pardon?
stigma.
Stigma.
Oh yeah,
Stigma. Yeah.
it's
And go ahead.
when my family was first brought to the attention of mental health back in the mid 70s. NAMI didn't exist then. NAMI's been in existence now since 1979. We have probably about 600 affiliates through the nation and over 100,000 members. So, but when I needed help, I didn't know schizophrenia from the chickenpox. And I went to the local library. I tried to get information, but it was not written in layman's terms that I could understand. My background was running a family business, it had nothing to do with mental health. But once you need the information, you seek it out. But at that time, I couldn't. It wasn't until mommy came along that I could actually find the information I needed to help my loved one. And
Right.
now, later, I married into a family with rampant mental illness, and there's at least 15 Hafner family members that live with a mental health condition. And one is a former physician. He was diagnosed at about 42 and lost his medical license. But yeah, he has bipolar disorder and now is working as a server in a restaurant after
Wow.
6 years as a doctor.
Wow. So what are the signs when you know it is most likely a mental illness, not just like a regular sadness?
Well, there's what's known as situational depression or a reactive depression. And under that comes somebody that maybe has lost a job, maybe somebody that's going through a broken relationship, maybe who has lost a loved one, and they are reacting to the situation. But once the grief of that situation eases, so does the depression. But when it lingers month after month after month, and the hygiene takes a dive, and they're not socializing with their friends anymore, or they're relating in ways that are not that are maladaptive to their normal personality, that's when you know they need help. And oftentimes they don't seek it. And getting back to your remark, is because of the stigma. They don't
Right.
see a need, because how are my family members going to react? Are people going to think I'm crazy? And that reminds me of Patty Duke, who I heard present in person. I read her book, A Brilliant Madness, back in about 1992 or 93. And she said when she had the diagnosis of bipolar disorder, she wasn't crazy. She had a legitimate brain disorder, a chemical imbalance in the brain, and she could get help for it, and she could lead a normal life. And that's what she did.
That's awesome. So when people are getting help, does it actually rewire the brain?
It helps the chemicals to more normally react.
Okay. Fantastic. So, let me see if there was now you guys don't deal with any medications though, correct?
No, no, we
Okay.
do not. We
What is
teach about but we don't prescribe. No, none of us are mental health professionals. We are all family members that have learned through the years how to manage our loved ones illness and how better to cope. And that's one thing all of our NAMI programs teach is, what can I do for you? How can I help you to cope better? Back in 2012, I was invited to Arlington, Virginia to help develop a program called NAMI Homefront.
Mhm.
It is a quick program that is appropriate for families that have veterans or current service members who need help adapting to their loved ones' changes in their personality,
Yeah.
especially when they're deployed.
Oh, definitely. I just did a podcast yesterday, and he's actually in rehabilitation center right now, and just he, can't just the programming that they do, and they don't really deprogram, so they get out into regular society again, and they have all these issues going on, a lot of depression or anxiety. Um,
A
and
lot of PTSD.
what is the most common type of mental illness or struggles? Is it usually like love relations or family relations? What's the most common that you are seeing?
The most common thing I see being a family member is how the families are affected. Now, I have been involved with CIT, that's Crisis Intervention Team. And it's a training, a 40-hour training that is done. Our Summit Point does it in Battle Creek. And I also have helped with those through the years. I have been on their board, their advisory board. But it helps police officers know how to more effectively respond to someone who may be in an episode. And I just had a situation a couple of weeks ago when a mother from Knoxville, Tennessee, called me and said that her son was in Battle Creek. He was homeless, but she had found out he was in Battle Creek. And she asked me, what are some of the things I can do to help him? And I said, number one, call the police station, talk to a CIT trained officer if you can, and let them know your son's description, his name, his diagnosis. And so when they approach him, they can approach him realizing that he may have voices in his head. He may be in an episode that he's not behaving like himself. He's symptomatic. And that is such a huge, enormous help. But one of my responsibilities with CIT is to get the family members to come and tell their journey at the outset of their loved one's diagnosis and where they are now in their loved one's ongoing recovery. And during the evaluation process, after the 40 hours, one of the main components of that 40 hours, although it's all valuable information, the thing that they really hold on to, how the families are affected, and how the person that lives with a mental health condition, who also tells their story during this 40-hour training, how they are affected. And I think my nephew is a great example. Here he was a physician, and now he's no longer able to practice medicine. The woman that called me from Knoxville, Tennessee, whose son was in Battle Creek, that they came from Knoxville to Battle Creek to find him, he was an attorney. And he's been homeless for 9 years. He just cannot
Yeah,
adapt to
it
diet.
affects everybody.
Absolutely. This illness does not show any favoritism. It
Now,
it
now is
Go ahead.
mental illness on the rise since the pandemic?
That's interesting. You should ask me that because I hold my meetings once a month, and at the very beginning of the pandemic, the family members all seemed to be doing very well. And what we determined was because they all had been in therapy, they had all been in group sessions, that they were using the tools, the resources they were giving to cope. But then
Okay.
after it lasted, 6, 8 months, a year, 2 years, then that toolbox got a little empty because all the things that they had called up because of the longevity of the pandemic, they were not able to really continue with the success they had had in the past of relating to what was going on.
So, are the techniques changing? Like, you get used to them and you need to change it up? Is that what you're saying?
It's not what I'm saying, but the tools that they in the past became ineffective because of the longevity of the situation.
Okay.
Not that they couldn't employ them, but some of them kind of gave up. Like I can't do this, I can't do that, and we were all pretty much homebound. I went after the pandemic started. I was in Virginia with my daughter, and she had just been recently diagnosed with cancer, and her husband was battling cancer. And then I got home on a Monday. On a Friday, my brother had a massive heart attack. So paying attention to what was going on, what you should and shouldn't do, I had to be there. If my daughter needed me, if my sister-in-law needed me to help with my brother, I had to be healthy. I went 77 days. That is 10 weeks. I never left my home. I had to stay well.
Right.
So yeah, I was not affected like some were. I didn't have a toolbox, but I knew enough to rationalize this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. So
True,
that,
true. Yeah, I was by myself, and luckily I taught online, so I had, something to do, keep me busy. Also, I mean, they were children, but it was still like somebody to talk to,
yep.
you know. And to be honest, it probably helped that we have Zoom and things like that.
Oh,
It probably would have
right.
been much worse without that. Um, so I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to go ahead and add in the description your contact information, if that's all right
Okay.
with you. And hopefully we'll have another meeting soon. But I appreciate everything you've done for me and our
Thank
viewers out there.
Yeah, if there's another opportunity I have to talk about more of some of NAMI's programs, I would be very
Oh, I got time if you want to tell me some more.
like to, yes. Uh,
Yeah.
our basics program is a 6-week program that's appropriate for families and caregivers of children under the age of 18. And you know the rules change when they lift their head off that pillow when they turn 18. Oppositional defiance disorder is not in the DSM-5, but it goes into a disorder. So, it does evolve into something else. But the parents are no longer legally responsible after the age of 18. So, in family to family, we talk about bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia, anxiety disorder, PTSD, and we don't talk about autism, and we don't talk about some of the childhood disorders. Like ADD or ADHD. But in the basics program, we do. And we have people that teach it that have had the experience of being family members of a child that was diagnosed. So we talk about truancy. We talk more about the juvenile justice system and the things that affect families that have kids. And that's a very worthwhile program. We also have a program through NAMI, although it's not active in Battle Creek. It's called In Our Own Voice. And it's a program that have people that are credentialed that live with a mental health condition that can go into a church, they can go into a Rotary, they can go into a Kiwanis or any place that needs a presenter. They can go in and talk about their journey from the onset of their illness to where they are now in their recovery. And they also have a video that they can show that talks about how people can reclaim their life after having treatment. But one thing the families need to recognize too is once their loved one gets into treatment, not so much with the youth as with the adult children or spouses or siblings, that they can go on if they comply to a treatment plan that doesn't mix alcohol or drugs with their medication. They
True.
can go on live a normal life, but you can't mix the drugs or the alcohol because that medication is not going to do its job if they have other factors involved that's going to dissuade some of the treatments, the chemicals that can provide. But we also have, I talked about CIT. We are very, very helpful in that. But we have other programs. We have a peer-to-peer program that is an 8-week program that is for people who live with mental illness that is taught by people who are managing their mental illness. So one has an eating disorder, one has bipolar disorder, another one lives with schizophrenia. So they can teach a class that is a certified class. The people have to, all of NAMI programs, they have to be certified by taking a training to teach these programs. So it's not somebody coming out from left field saying you need to do this, that, or the next thing. They have the actual lived experience. But the
I
peer-to-peer,
kind of want to add that certification. I have so many certifications. I'd love to.
yeah, let me know. Yeah, I have your contact information. And when the next one becomes available, I will certainly let you know. But the family to family program is a program that is so near and dear to my heart. And it really helped me to better understand what was going on in my family. And it just gave me coping skills. It gave me the diagnoses, what to look for if they weren't taking their meds. It helped me to cope. It helped me to know what my rights were and what my loved ones' rights were. And we have a person during that class that comes in and talks about their journey and how they have successfully complied with a treatment program that has allowed them to get back in the workforce and to get back with their group of friends that may have neglected them in the past because they didn't know how to respond when their friend became symptomatic and they may have been out bowling or at a softball game. And maybe the illness engaged while they were there and the friends didn't know how to cope with it or how to destimulate what was going on.
Excellent. Because yeah, sometimes we can be better friends if we know what somebody's triggers are too.
Absolutely. Triggers are one of the things that can put them into an episode, but sometimes it doesn't take a trigger. Like the young man I was walking with around a track. We were talking about normal everyday things and nothing could have triggered it. But all of a sudden that imbalance was there and it went into an episode.
Yeah, you'll see
So
that with even like serial killers sometimes. They're just going about the day all of a sudden. Why not?
yep,
And
yep.
it's like it wasn't necessarily like premeditated. It was just something
No,
just snapped.
exactly.
So, how are the coaches assigned? Is it based on their trauma? Like if you dealt with somebody like schizophrenic, you would be assigned, or is it just how do you pair up your coaches?
I have a list of people who I know that have loved ones with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, PTSD, whatever the diagnosis is. I also have a listing of people who live with those conditions. So if somebody were to call me and say, well, my son has schizophrenia and this is one of the things that he just went through, I can put them in touch with someone that has had the same experience. This worked for me. This may not work for you, but it worked for me. It worked for my loved one when he employed these strategies to help them. So yeah, anybody that needs help, I can pair them up with somebody if I haven't lived with it myself with a loved one, or I had not been through it with one of my loved ones. I can put them in touch with someone that is willing to talk with them.
Now, what if I have a friend who, for 20 some years, was diagnosed as bipolar, and recently they're like, oops, we mean borderline. She was misdiagnosed for a long time, and I'm certified to teach psychology. I'm not a therapist, but based on what I've seen, it does seem like the new diagnosis is correct. How often are people misdiagnosed?
It happens frequently, especially in the early stages of being diagnosed because the illnesses overlap. So, because of that overlap, they may present themselves to their therapist with these symptoms. The next time they may present with different symptoms. And as long as they have a therapist that understands, that knows the illnesses, that can better generate to the psychiatrist what medications will help. But they may be on, let's say, 20 milligrams of Prozac 3 times a day. And after a while, that chemical in the brain changes. So they need a different prescription or a different dose or a completely different medication to help them along. So it's an inexact science. So the
Yeah.
prescription may work today may not work tomorrow or 20 years from now. And then again, that person may present other symptoms that may, according to the DSM-5, present itself as a different diagnosis. And it's not unusual.
Now I know like with schizophrenia, like I think the men get it at a younger age and the women are like 10 years later usually. And I know it's almost like you cross over this threshold and then you can't come back. So is that like a stress related and it just zapped the brain too much or
It depends on the individual completely and the chemical makeup in their brain.
yeah. So like you said, we're running out of time, but like you said, as soon as you need help, go get it. And don't worry about the stigma because your health is more important. So, Jenny, thank you so much. And I appreciate everything you've done for me and this channel. So, guys, feel free to reach out to her. She's a wonderful, wonderful person and we'll give you a lot of great information and resources. Jenny, thanks again.
And
Well,
thank you.
I hope to see you soon.
Uh-huh.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.